Sarah Kay is a Japanese Jewish American poet, playwright, singer, songwriter, filmmaker, photographer, and teacher who specializes in spoken word poetry. She believes in using spoken word to inspire and educate her audience. Kay uses poetry to express personal stories that she feels herself and others can learn from. She takes inspiration from her daily life and turns ordinary moments into art. She uses spoken word as an outlet to communicate her thoughts and pass on wisdom to others. She writes and performs in a carefree, lucid style that is reminiscent of beat poetry. Kay says that she's been writing poetry since she was young and was inspired by slam poetry at the age of 14. Kay began performing poetry at the Bowery Poetry Club at the same age and joined their slam poetry team in 2006. At the age of 18, she made an appearance on Def Poetry Jam, performing her original poem, Hands. Kay has been influenced by literature and the arts since a young age. In high school, she developed a poetry platform to encourage youth involvement. Project Voice, or Vocal Outreach into Creative Expression, is the tool Kay uses to promote spoken word into today's culture and society. She wants her audience to rediscover wonder, to fight their instincts to be cool and unfazed. Along with writing, Kay also works as an editor for the Write Bloody Publishing Company. Not only that, but she's an alum of Brown University and taught 9th grade English and AP Literature at Classical High School in Providence, Rhode Island. Kay's first published book, titled B, was an illustrated copy of her most famous poem that described the relationships between a parent and their child. The poem, B, or If I Should Have a Daughter, expresses the advice she would pass down to her own daughter, encouraging her to grow from her mistakes.
If I should have a daughter, instead of Mom, she's gonna call me Point B. Because that way she knows that no matter what happens, at least she can always find her way to me. And I'm gonna paint the solar systems on the backs of her hands. So she has to learn the entire universe before she can say, oh, I know that like the back of my hand. And she's gonna learn that this life will hit you hard, in the face, wait for you to get back up just so it can kick you in the stomach. But getting the wind knocked out of you is the only way to remind your lungs how much they like the taste of air. There is hurt here that cannot be fixed by Band-Aids or poetry. So the first time she realizes that Wonder Woman isn't coming, I'll make sure she knows she doesn't have to wear the cape all by herself. Because no matter how wide you stretch your fingers, your hands will always be too small to catch all the pain you want to heal. Believe me, I've tried. And baby, I'll tell her, don't keep your nose up in the air like that. I know that trick. I've done it a million times. You're just smelling for smoke, so you can follow the trail back to a burning house so you can find the boy who lost everything in the fire to see if you can save him. Or else, find the boy who lit the fire in the first place to see if you can change him. But I know she will anyway, so instead, I'll always keep an extra supply of chocolate and rain boots nearby because there is no heartbreak that chocolate can't fix. Okay, there's a few heartbreaks that chocolate can't fix, but that's what the rain boots are for, because rain will wash away everything if you let it. I want her to look at the world through the underside of a glass-bottom boat, to look through a microscope at the galaxies that exist on the pinpoint of a human mind, because that's the way my mom taught me, that there'll be days like this, there'll be days like this, my mama said. When you open your hands to catch, I'll wind up with only blisters and bruises. When you step out of the phone booth and try to fly, and the very people you want to save are the ones standing on your cape. When your boots will fill with rain and you'll be up to your knees in disappointment, and those are the very days you have all the more reason to say thank you. Because there's nothing more beautiful than the way the ocean refuses to stop kissing the shoreline, no matter how many times it's sent away. You will put the wind in winsome, lose some. You will put the star in starting over, and no matter how many landmines erupt in a minute, be sure your mind lands on the beauty of this funny place called life. And yes, on a scale from 1 to over-trusting, I am pretty damn naive, but I want her to know that this world is made out of sugar. It can crumble so easily, but don't be afraid to stick your tongue out and taste it. Baby, I'll tell her, remember your mama is a worrier and your papa is a warrior, and you are the girl with small hands and big eyes who never stops asking for more. Remember that good things come in threes, and so do bad things, and always apologize when you've done something wrong, but don't you ever apologize for the way your eyes refuse to stop shining. Your voice is small, but don't ever stop singing. And when they finally hand you heartache, when they slip war and hatred under your door and offer you handouts on street corners of cynicism and defeat, you tell them that they really ought to meet your mother.
She recently published another book titled No Matter the Wreckage. This collection encompasses her natural, honest stories about love, travel, and family. This collection also includes works from her earlier years, including one poem called A Love Letter from a Toothbrush to a Bicycle Tire.
Told me that I was meant for the cleaner life, that you would drag me through the mud. They said that you would tread all over me, that they could see right through you, that you were full of hot air, that I would always be chasing, always watching you disappear after sleeker models, that it would be a vicious cycle. But I know better. I know about your rough edges, and I have seen your perfect curves. I will fit into whatever spaces you let me. If loving you means getting dirty, bring on the grime. I will leave this porcelain home behind. I'm used to twice-a-day relationships, but with you, I'll take all the time. And I know we live in different worlds, and we're always really busy, but in my dreams, you spin around me so fast, I always wake up dizzy. So maybe one day you'll grow tired of the road and roll on back to me. And when I blink my eyes into morning, your smile will be the only one I see.
Kay grew up in New York City and is used to rushing and chaos. The essence of that is evident in her poetry and her performances. She speaks quickly as though she is running out of time to tell her advice. In her printed poetry, much of the lines are cut off with new thoughts, and everything is kind of squeezed together as though she's stuffing every thought she's ever had together, all for the benefit of her readers. She calls spoken word a very immediate style of poetry. She can instantly receive feedback from the audience. Kay draws influence from her own life, but perhaps her biggest influence is Phil Kay, who she deems her poetry partner in crime. Kay and Kay worked together on Project Voice. They toured the world and performed for audiences and set up classroom workshops on poetry. They performed duet poems, one of their most famous ones being Origin Story, which comments on the uncanny similarities between their lives, despite having only met in college.
Introductions. My name is Sarah Kay.
My name is Phil Kay. I'm from California.
Born and raised in NYC.
Let's see, fun fact about me.
My mom is Japanese and my dad is Jewish. Not a common combination, but I think it's kind of cute. People call me Japaju.
Japanese.
Ashkenazi Kamikaze.
And come December,
Hanukkah and Christmas. Plus, you should taste my mother's brisket. Jan Kawamura's matzo ball soup with noodles brings my father Jeffrey to his knees.
It took Mom Reiko and Dad Michael to raise this lanky, cockeyed half-breed.
Well, I think that's it. My mom, my dad, and me. Oh, plus my little brother, he's 19.
My little sister is a deadpan firecracker. She's only 19, but she keeps me on track. Part of her name is Sarah.
My brother's name is Philip.
Kay is incredibly candid with her audience. She shares relevant stories. Sarah Kay says she writes to solve problems. She says she can complete a poem and walk away with a resolution, or she can feel twice as confused as before she started writing in the first place. Her goal through poetry and through Project Voice is to teach people to love it. Her poetry leaves an impression through its honesty and the fervor in her performance of spoken word. Her work resonates with the reader.
Spoken word poetry is a type of poetry that doesn't just want to live on paper, that something about it demands to be heard out loud and witnessed in person. It's a very immediate art form. You get to see visibly on people's faces and hear out loud if and when they are responding. There's a lot of people who have been led to believe that poetry is not for them, or they don't get poetry. And that always makes me sad, because a big part of what I try to do in my work, not only in my art, but also in my work in classrooms, is to try to make poetry feel a little bit more accessible. Sometimes I'm in an audience where it is helpful to give them time to realize that a poem is going to happen. And other times, it's actually more effective to not warn people.
I see the moon. The moon sees me. The moon sees somebody I don't see.
If I get to heaven before you do, I'll make a hole and pull you through.
And I'll write your name on every star, and that way the world won't seem so far.
The astronaut will not be at work today.
He is called in sick. He has turned off his cell phone, his pager, his laptop, his alarm clock.
There is a fat yellow cat asleep on his couch.
Windows against his window pane and not even a hint of coffee in the kitchen air.
Everybody is in a tizzy. The engineers on the 15th floor have stopped working on the particle machine.
The anti-gravity room is leaking, and even the freckled kid with glasses whose only job it is to take out the trash is nervous.
Fumbles the bag, spills a banana peel and a paper cup. Nobody notices.
They are too busy calculating how much this will mean for lost time. How many galaxies are we losing per second, and how long before the rocket can be launched?
Somewhere an electron flies off the energy cloud.
A black hole has erupted.
A mother finishes setting the table. A Law and Order marathon is starting. The astronaut is asleep.
Forgotten to turn off his watch, which ticks against his wrist like a metal pulse.
He does not hear. He dreams of coral reefs and plankton. His fingers find the pillowcases, sailing masts. He turns on his side, opens his eyes once.
He thinks that scuba divers must have the most wonderful job in the world. So much water to glide through.
Do I like Sarah Kay and spoken word poetry? Julia Kelly can't ask an easier question.
Didn't know this poem at all, because Julia just sprang this on me.
Like Sarah Kay because I think she's brought back the idea that poetry is meant to be recited and meant to be spoken out loud.
It's a good poem, honestly, like A plus. How it kind of seems like such a childish career goal. What?
Ambition.
Ambition, I guess, is a better word. And then how he's kind of neglecting his adult responsibilities.
Was it what it meant to me?
Yeah, how did it touch you?
Well, the astronaut was clearly the tragic hero.
Words having to deal with like sensory stuff, like touch.
Pretty nice. I enjoy the themes. I think it's interesting incorporating the transition from life out in maybe space or someplace that isn't Earth back to Earth.
That's a great poem.
Why?
Because it's got good words and stuff.
I think it's a statement about the American dream.
I feel like it meant like something about like progress, but like how it can only go on if certain people are there.
Like small things like the ticking of the watch, like the feel of like pillowcase in like in between your fingers, or like pushing water aside. I don't know.
Definitely my favorite poet. I definitely love how relatable her poems are. I love how passionate she is about it. You can definitely tell when she gets on stage that it's coming from somewhere deeper than just a piece of paper. Really interesting way to point to make, I guess.
And the prevalence of the white suburban household in our thoughts and actions.
I'm just thinking the last line. We're just talking about like so much water to swim through. I think it's that idea of just like life having to do with like everything around you.
It means a lot. It's very down deep in here.
You're the tragic hero.
I like spoken word personally a lot better than the poetry we typically read. Spoken word poetry is poetry that demands to be read out loud, to be heard, and you can definitely tell with her poems, especially if you read one, it definitely has a rhythm to it, and you're able to really be drawn into it just by the way it sounds.